it's the ignorant leading the ignorant. If there's a 16-year-old producer who just decides that sampling anything under than 8 seconds long is fair use, they're gonna say that in a forum.
This shit
I
is
want
crazy.
to deal with that too. I want to talk about that too. What's going down? It's the Music Entrepreneur Club podcast. My name is DJ Payne One. I am joined by my amazing co-hosts, Dame Ritter and Erinn Knight. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning. I guess we're fresh back from South by. I know Erinn was there. Unfortunately, Payne was not there.
I was there in spirit. You guys took my energy with you. I need it back now, but appreciate the opportunity.
It was cool. It definitely is a lot lighter than it used to be. I think the last time I was there was a long time ago. So it was like 2014, 2015. But their main street is 6th Street, where they have like a bunch of bars and live music and things like that. And the last time I went there, you couldn't really walk down the street in a straight line. Like you were going to be shoulder to shoulder, kind of zigzagging your way through the street. When I went there this time, it was still cool. Like some of the events I went to were cool, but like you had plenty of room to just walk down the street. So that was kind of like my metric for comparing the two. I didn't have an official badge. I didn't go to any of the panels. I'm assuming they were good because South by Southwest panels are usually pretty good. And I know Erinn was on a panel, so maybe she can speak more to that. I don't know if you saw any other ones, but
it's weird because my panel was the best attended panel that I've ever been to at South by, because normally it's like, even if you're in a big convention room, it's not full. Ours was like, they put 200 seats out, and then there were probably another like 150 people standing. So it was like, that was insane. But I will agree, like the panel is the most like people I've ever seen at a panel, but the events in the streets, they were like dead. I feel like even compared to last year, which is weird because I threw a show last year. We threw their only R&B show last year, and we had people standing on the street trying to get into our event. So even compared to last year, I think that it was way lighter. The energy was like decent. I stayed at the house half the time. I just felt like I'm not into, I don't know, it doesn't feel like it used to, which is okay. Like, I don't think everything always has to feel the same, but I just feel like it's a lot of brands and people just trying to prove that they have money to spend and like trying to get rid of their like Q1 budgets. It doesn't really feel like a place where they're advocating for the advancement of artists as much as it used to, or like advocating for discovery, which is why I'm really grateful for the Digilog and that panel and everything, because that felt like it was focused on artists, and you could see that's why artists wanted to be there and managers wanted to be there. And then they gave a lot of opportunities for very small or up and coming artists to perform in front of a captive audience, which I feel like was what South by originals, and it's the original intention of South by.
Well, I think with a $1,000 badge, it's going to deter a lot of artists from showing up, at least to the actual events. I think that's tough. I think they should have another badge or something to encourage more artists to come or to make it accessible. Because I think the badges were like $900 or $1,000.
That's one of the cheaper badges. I feel like still it's been that expensive for years, and that's never deterred people. There's something different, I feel.
Well, I went to a discussion that Blast and his team had. That was cool. That was light too, but that was good for me because I got a chance to. Well, I knew. And we know Carl. Carl's on Blast team, but I had never met Victor or Blast himself, so that was cool. So sometimes it's cool when it's light because it's an opportunity to get your little, basically a meet and greet. And then, so I was down there with the Two Lost team, and we sponsored an event on Friday that was pretty cool. It was like a showcase with a lot of young talent that was dope. It was well put together at a cool spot. And then there's a platform called NME, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. I wasn't that familiar, but their showcase was popping. And I guess Two Lost distributed their latest mixtape But the mixtape, as I was looking at the artists, I wasn't familiar with any of them by name. But when I started looking up on Spotify, like, yeah, hella monthly listeners. Like every artist that was on this mixtape had like 2 million plus, some in the 20 millions. And it was the most publicized because as I was walking, even with like physical flyers, I saw them like everywhere, for that showcase. So that was like a whole day thing. That seemed to be the most popping event that I saw. So shout out to the people at NME and all the artists that I'm sure everybody listening to this may know, but I had no idea who they were.
Was there a lot of continued talk about NFTs this year?
No.
There was like, I think I saw like one AR, VR, NFT thing that happened the day that I got there. And then I saw one QR code, like, like a poster that was hung up kind of consistently. And it was like for a smart wallet, and they were like, if you catch this poster a certain amount of times, then you get this thing. And you get an NFT from the company, but that was literally it. Whereas last year, it was everybody, every brand, even if their thing wasn't a Web3 thing, had something to do with what they would have some sort of janky connection where they're like, yeah, and Web3. And even last year, I was like, I don't really understand what this is supposed to be getting to. But no, it's like, it was a world of a difference from last year, which is, I don't even want to get into this, but it was like a minor trace of NFTs and all of that. I think that's part of the reason it was so light this year is because all of that money wasn't there. All of those bullshit, let me not call them bullshit, all of those showcases and activations. Like last year, Meta did like a 2-day or 3-day Web3 massive activation where they like did this like metaverse mapping thing. And there were like so many people coming into town for that. So I think that may be part of the reason it was light, because some of that money wasn't there. Some of those participants weren't there. There were no NFT communities doing meetups or showcases or anything.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin's value dropped since last South by damn near half. I mean, I know it's up to like around 25 now, but it was at 19 at its low point. So I'm sure that has something to do with the NFT market not being spoken about, among other reasons. I don't see any changes from, when we were critical of the various NFT rollouts back then. Nothing's changed since then. And just very quickly, I had an experience with an NFT platform. I tried it out. They, I won't get into specifics because then people are going to know who I'm talking about. It was just, I'm not here to bash something. I'm here to ask questions. And when I don't get answers, then I'm going to criticize the dialogue. And for me, this experience wasn't great. I wanted it to be great. I had, let's just round it up. I had $100 in my NFT wallet, right? And so I wanted to try out a transfer because, and here's one of the many issues. This isn't the fault of NFTs, but I received notice that you couldn't transfer out your money after a certain point because like the payment system, I don't know, something, they're like cutting ties with these kinds of apps or something, which is already kind of a red flag. I go to withdraw the money. You can transfer it to a very specific wallet, and then it just becomes, people make it seem like it's so accessible for the consumer market to just come over to NFTs. Man, you got to download all these things and verify your identity here 3 ways and here. So I was like, let me just try the transfer because they have a bank transfer option. And I think, great, this is the bridge from the metaverse to the real world. They took 25% right off top. And if for some reason there was an issue with the transfer, they would take another 50%. So I would end up making 25% of what was in my wallet. So it just felt like a big scam. I shouldn't, I'm not saying it is a scam. I'm saying it felt like a scam. So I didn't have a great first experience.
If somebody's taking 75% of your money, like I'm pretty sure, I'm comfortable this week that you can call that a scam. I just don't. So again, let's not go down well, just real quick. Like just a lot of people that are prominent in the space or that built up a name in the space are even casting doubt and are like jumping ship at this point. And I just want to let people know that at the end of the day, it's the music industry. And if you think you found some type of silver bullet to success, if you think you found a community of like angels where everybody just looks out for the community and everybody sings Kumbaya, you're delusional. This is a music industry where pretty much everybody is out for themselves until you find your little tribe. It ain't gonna be no big community of people that are just helping each other out, and it's just the greatest thing. The fact that you thought that scammers and people that were selfish and just out for themselves were not going to infiltrate the Web3 space, they were already sitting next to you when you thought it was Kumbaya. Like they were already there. So there's no silver bullet. If you found a community within the Web3 space, a community of fans, and now people like your music, that's amazing. But like we said many moons ago, like it's no different. You're going to have to do the same thing in the Web3 space that you have to do in any other space. You have to build fans, build a community. There's no... for the people that got in early and got their money, selling a video for $60,000, awesome. That's amazing for you guys. But
is there an equivalent in the Web 2 space to an NFT? Was there a gold rush in the music business when it came to something?
Yeah. I think Kickstarter was that. Kickstarters were hot for a second. You can still, I think Kickstarter, I think crowdfunding is still legit. Matter of fact, we plan to crowdfund part of the movie, or the feature film that we plan to shoot this year. But I think there were a lot more people like giving artists money during the time when like Lil Dicky raised his money to create his professional rapper album. Right. We don't see it as often. We don't see rappers raising. I think he raised over $100,000.
Yeah. Well, then he got signed.
Yeah. But I there's a lot of similarities. It's not apples to apples, but there's definitely a lot of similarities between when Kickstarter kind of was a thing. And like I said, crowdfunding is still, it's just harder to do. It's just, it's just going back to having real fans that want to support you. So yeah. Anyway, I was consulting a small label, and I was just thinking about like all the things that I was sharing, and I think what I was doing, especially in the beginning, it's saving them a shitload of money more so than like making them money, right? Like if you start a label, it's probably going to be a while before you start making money, if ever. And it just got me thinking. I'm just going to throw this question out there. I haven't really fully thought it through. Should managers, and again, this was more in a consulting capacity, but managers have the ability to save you money as well as make you money, right? Should managers be compensated for the money that is saved?
Let's talk about it.
I'll just throw it. I haven't 360 thought about this. Obviously, I'm leaning towards some type of compensation for that, because if I start with a new artist, I can probably save you a lot of money, and I know that the attention will just be focused on what I can bring to the table in terms of the money that gets added to your bank account. But I can probably save a lot of money from going out. And I think there's value in that. It's just as valuable. Money saved is just as important as money earned, in my opinion. So What do you guys think?
I think that people I feel like the music industry is an industry where we talk about how fluid and magical it is, and you can do anything. But when you propose something like that, artists will just take it as you wanting to be in their pockets. I'm of the mindset that having me on your team saves you time, energy, heartache, and a ton of money. Like, I'm aware of that, even just because of the things that we have access to or the technology that we're offered to do beta runs in and things like that. Do you know what I'm saying? That can save you money. So yeah, I think in my world, I would love if this is one of the reasons that I stopped working with new artists and I only work with, as Spotify would classify it, emerging artists. So I think they do new artists is like 0 to 250,000 monthly listeners. Emerging is like 250 to like, I think 4 or 5 million. And then I don't know, there's one other after emerging that they do. I could have this order wrong, but I saw them kind of rank the list. And I just started working with emerging artists maybe 3 or 4 years ago because I recognized that even if I was saving my new artist money or even making money, there's so little for me there that it doesn't actually benefit me what I'm bringing to the table. So if I were to start working with another artist, a new one, you would have to pay me, like until I reach a certain threshold, I want to be paid, period. And most new artists don't see the value in that. I have a couple of manager friends who manage new artists who work full-time jobs and they pay their manager and they're like, you still get 20 or 30%, but until we reach a certain threshold, you're either going to get $1,000 a month or $750 a month plus your percentage until we hit 1,000 or 1,500 a month, whatever it is. I prefer that. And since most artists don't want to do that, that's why I consult. It's like, that's fine. You can just pay me $200 for 45 minutes of my time because I recognize that that's at very least what it's worth. And I think that that's an accessible price. And most artists in that 45 minutes will get a month's worth of stuff to do because most artists really aren't there. So yeah, I think that for the expertise that I'm bringing, it needs to be compensated. And part of that is because I am saving you money, time, energy, understanding. You're going to have to do a lot. If you talk to me, you're still going to be spending time and energy. It's just not going to be in the wrong direction, I think. So I like the idea of it. I just don't think that there are many people who are interested in valuing a manager from that perspective. They're just like, no, I'm the creative. You can take 20%. And so that's also why I'm out of management. I'm like, this shit is bullshit. Like, my value is never, you know what I'm saying? Like, my value is never calculated properly, even from a percentage base. You know what I'm saying? It's like, this is on my mind because this morning I've been dealing with fucking producer splits, but it's like the producer makes it, no disrespect to you, Payne, but I want to weigh in on this because you're here and you can kind of speak to it. But the producer gets paid off top, and then we also negotiate splits. Nobody's tripping about that. But if a manager were to come and say, I want to get paid off top, and then after you make a certain amount of money, I'm taking my percentage, people are like, oh, that's predatory. Why would you do that to an artist? Da, da, da. I'm like, because when I walk in the door, my value is there. You know what I'm saying? When a producer gives their beat, that's what they were there for. So it's like, I just don't understand why it always feels like, I don't know. I personally feel like the managers in the industry are the most undervalued and devalued role because there's no way to secure our funding, even though we have a ton of value, and it's super necessary for people to win and maneuver because the manager is creating that. And I don't know, it's an interesting conversation. But again, this is why I got out of management. There are a lot of people, even prominent artists who've been on the Emmy, like who are on the MEC page that have hit me up and they're like, oh, I'm interested in you managing me, da 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 da. And I'm like, this is what I cost. And they're like, oh, but I've already got money going. And it's like, that's cool, but you hit me. I know how much I'm bringing to the table. And I feel like if you're already trying to negotiate me out the door when I get there, you probably don't value what I have to bring to the table. So I'm super uninterested in management right now because nobody ever wants to talk about the value that we're bringing.
Well, I'll say this, with producers, that debate comes up all the time. I mean, that is the one that we've even talked about it when we responded to the futuristic video where, you know, people, artists, recording artists, and even a lot of producers jumped on that whole concept of producers getting paid off top and then getting paid on the back end. And like, it's this awful thing. Like, hey, it's not producers' fault that the music business was set up to revolve around royalties based on equity and intellectual property. That's just how it works. But I agree that managers, because the business isn't set up that way, there's less of a cultural lean towards that kind of arrangement. And I've seen, you know, managers, I think it's just the narrative. You know, there's an emerging narrative that producers are these evil, money hungry beings, which is crazy because we're all just artists doing the same thing. But there's almost always been a narrative that managers are just there to suck your blood. And it's like, wait a minute, how? When, and it's crazy because even the managers that have been around forever and that have done amazing things for artists, their pasts are still kind of checkered too, based on these narratives, because there's some conflict with an artist, and the artist narrative always wins because managers don't have fans. At very least, producers have fans because producers are in the artist category. So I agree, managers have it worse. And then on top of it, you know, at any given moment, you just abort that relationship. With producers, you can't really, I mean, you can, but it's way harder to have a song out, have a disagreement with me and say, you know what, we're kicking you off the song. What, you're just going to have an acapella? It doesn't work that way. You can't pull the release. So it's a different dynamic. I was going to say something else related to that. With the consulting fee, this is, I think, what I would do, and it's the smartest thing, but it also proves the point that I'm making, that relationship is so tenuous, because I feel like when I do a consultation, when anyone does a consultation and pays hourly, they're perceiving more value than if they're hearing it from their management. And that's what bothered me when I was a manager, was that suddenly, you know, you brought me on to manage you because you saw me as knowledgeable and helpful. And then when I start telling you things that you didn't want to hear, it was like, I got to find a second opinion. And then you find a second opinion from any damn buddy, from someone down the street, the clerk at the auto part shop, you know, and then suddenly all those ideas, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whoever, and they're like, so-and-so said this, and they like, okay, then get managed by them and see how long your career lasts. But a consultant has this advantage of perceived value, knowledge, etc., because they're not there 24/7. They don't feel like an employee. They feel like someone you contracted, paid for. They're in and out. You get them in short bursts. And for the most part, you know, I'm of the opinion that artists, whether you're a producer, singer, songwriter, performing artist, whatever, stick with consultants for a while. Get the value out of that. And then when you do everything that they say, then you figure out if you need management, because that's the goal, obviously, getting to the point where you need management. But you know, a lot of people just want management, and then they don't see the value in it because it just comes.
Yeah, I mean, I still have never like sought artists to manage. Like, I'm never looking for, you know, creatives to add to my roster, and it's always just kind of happened organically. But That's if I was to manage anybody new, like you already got to be making money. I'm in the same boat as Erinn. Like I'm older now. Like I don't have the time to put in all this sweat equity, save you money, educate you, things like that. And then knowing, like Payne just said, at any moment that you can abort ship, I just put all this sweat equity in. I didn't get shit for it. So, going forward, if I was to manage anybody, you got to be at a certain level already. I mean, and I help people all the time. Like, I have calls with artists, not even like paid stuff. It's people that I just have a relationship with. No problem doing that. But if I'm going to jump all in like, full service, got to be at a certain level. But for younger managers, you gotta get your reps in, and you gotta get some wins under your belt. So you have to take more risks if this is what you want to do. I am inspired by a lot of the younger managers that I've met recently, and I'm glad that there's some young positive energy in the space that are still out there that want to genuinely help artists. And if you're lucky enough to find one of these people that's capable, has the energy and enthusiasm, make sure you treat them right. That's all I can say.
I think the young managers are doing it well too, because most of the young managers are already working in music. Like that's what I realized at South by. A lot of the manager friends that I met up with that I've met on the internet, I'm like, oh, okay, you work for Universal Music Group. Oh, okay, you work for Genius. Oh, okay, you work for Dolby. And I think that that's smart. I came into the game working as a nanny and a bar manager because I wanted the freedom to be able to maneuver whenever, like with the music situation. So when I would get corporate job offers, there wasn't a lot of music industry jobs back when I first started, especially not in Atlanta. I looked for them, but I just stuck the course with my jobs, and then I quit, and I, just kept starting music companies to try to supplement my income. And I was like on my super entrepreneurship. But like right now, I'm like so burned out with this, like the entrepreneurship inside of this industry, because you're always having to establish your value, improve your worth, and pitch yourself. So I'm going back to what some of the new managers are doing. I'm trying to get a job in the music industry now, like a real full-time job, so that I'm still expanding my professional contacts and resources that'll benefit my artists and my companies, but so that I'm not so tied up in starting new projects whenever we need to fund something or whenever I need to fund something, because I take a salary from my companies. It's not great at all, So most of my money still comes from outside stuff that I do in the music industry. And I just kind of got tired of like always prospecting for outside gigs and consulting here and doing this there and doing that there. So now I'm just going to get a traditional, not even traditional, I'm going to get a music industry job, and that's going to help my mindset. It won't put as much pressure on us to always be turning out a win every month. Some months we can have low months, and I'm not worried about where the income is going to come from.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I know we ran over on that time. I just have one quick rant, and it's something that Erinn alluded to, because not directly, but you had mentioned kind of like these tiers of artists, right? And I saw a comment, I don't remember exactly verbatim what it said, based off of the Discovery Mode video that we posted on Instagram. And somebody had mentioned that, oh, this is only available for artists that have 25,000 monthly listeners or more. Like, what about the small artists or something like that? If it wasn't exact, it's the same sentiment. My point is still going to be valid, because I see this all the time. I have news for people. A small artist, in my opinion, and I know monthly listeners is not a perfect stat for this, because there's a lot of ways to make money. I'm considering a small artist everything up to like 500,000 monthly listeners at the minimum. I don't know how you guys define it, but I want to get your guys' perspective, because to me, people that want help, if you got 100 monthly listeners, 1,000 monthly listeners, you got to help yourself, because there's a lot of artists out there getting it at the 500,000 monthly listener, and they are still like borderline. Am I a full-time artist? I mean, at 500,000 monthly listeners, you should be a full-time artist. I would say on average, if you're like around 300, you're probably a full-time artist. But again, every artist is different. People get it different kind of ways. Merch, you might have a different business model, whatever. But, you have to help yourself. That's the message, right? You think you're going to get help at this 1,000 monthly listener mark, 50,000, like these are small. Those are super small artists. If you're smaller than that,
you're a hobbyist at that. Like, why would we be releasing technology for hobbyists? Like, if it's about making money, why are you? That joint made me. I'm like, you're not making any money. What are you talking about? This is a business.
Yeah. Well, even at the 500,000, if you're looking at, and I know this isn't how the math breaks down. We don't know how the math breaks down, but if you're looking at 500,000 monthly streams, that's still about $2,000 that you're making a month off the sum total of your streaming catalog from that platform. So putting that into perspective, hopefully you have a revenue model that can supplement that 2,000 with another 3,000 to 6,000, and cool. Then you're working, but you're certainly not living comfortably at that level. And I wouldn't consider you a big artist or even a mid-tier artist. Mid-tier artists are quietly making quite a bit of money. They're just not on the platforms that major artists are. And then you have even levels above that. Like Drake's not a major artist right now. Drake's an iconic artist. So I mean, these are arbitrary terms I'm just throwing out, but let's keep things in the perspective for ourselves. And again, look, Spotify streams don't mean that much to anybody other than the people that are either making their living off that or making nothing off that. For some of us, myself included, that's not a metric by which you measure our financial success. So keep that in mind too. But you know who you are as an artist, and you know where you are comparatively. And it's the same sort of measuring stick that you would use for anybody in any career. Are you professional? I mean, if you're a teacher and you're unlicensed, you're not necessarily a teacher. You could work in some capacity at like a charter school or something, and then cool, you're a teacher. But if you're a teacher and you're not employed as a teacher, or you're just doing volunteer work, where does that put you? So like keep perspective as these conversations are coming at you.
Yeah. So I mean, at 500,000 monthly listeners, Russell said he only has like 300,000 monthly listeners, but his community, he said he was making like 16,000 a month. So he has to be doing, like 4 million streams, but he's an outlier in terms of like how many listens each monthly listener listens to a particular song, right? But even on average, I would assume if you have 500,000 monthly listeners, unless it's all coming from playlisting, each one of those listens three times a month, something, I don't know something like that. So you're probably making like with all the streaming platforms, like 10 grand a month, on average, I think something around there. And then you have all your other revenue streams. So, but yeah, for the folk, anyway, long story short, if you don't have anywhere near that, you have to help yourself, and expecting anybody to help you at this point is ridiculous, unless you just get lucky, or you're fortunate, or you just have good people around you that are willing to lend their time and support. So yeah, that's all I had to say on that one.
Well,
y'all tripping.
I can briefly run down something that I saw. So I want to talk more about this next week, and kind of like my TikTok video and the response to that. But I witnessed a conversation recently between, I think it was all producers, but maybe some producers and recording artists, regardless of who it was. I'm going to stand on this fact that I believe to be true, which is that, or the statement rather, that the majority of the people in the music business don't know the music business. I think we all kind of agree on that. And someone had posted a beat. I'm not a big fan of sampling your contemporaries, but it happens. So someone posted a beat with a Snow Allegra sample. She's a current artist. And someone posed the question on the YouTube video and as a comment, is this beat copyright free? Now, one, I hate that question because it doesn't even make sense legally. And two, like, stop being that person. You know, be copyright free. Shut up. But someone replied and said, well, yes, because it has a Snow Allegra sample in it, so it has to be. And then that's when the migraine really started. Because copyright knowledge, especially in the music producer community, just isn't there. And there are producers, and I've spoken about them, and that video actually did well, which is great because I wanted to spread that message. But producers giving away free sample packs that are just uncleared samples that they looped up, which I think is problematic. But I also feel like, you know, it's still legally wrong. But if somebody is upfront about that and saying, hey, look, I don't own these, I'm just whatever, here are the names of the artists that actually created these, I think that would be a different issue. I wouldn't be making videos about it. But I'm seeing a lot of YouTube videos and emails giving out uncleared samples where the creator is saying, you know, these are my samples, I own them, I'm giving you permission to use them. Or I'm seeing producers sample and say, I sampled a song, but it's considered fair use because I only sampled. I guess I don't know where the fair use comes in. Someone just heard the term fair use and decided that it applied to them, and it doesn't. It doesn't apply to sampling. It just doesn't. I'm sorry, look it up. Or people will say the sample is nonprofit or one shots are public domain. These aren't facts. People just make these up. The producer community makes up a lot of stuff. And then because of forums, because of social media, they just share these half-baked ideas. And, you know, it's the ignorant leading the ignorant. If there's a 16-year-old producer who just decides that sampling anything under than 8 seconds long is fair use, they're going to say that in a forum. And then the 15-year-old coming up reads that and is like, oh, well, this is the OG. You don't know who that person is. And then you start spreading that information. And suddenly both of you are 25-year-old producers, and maybe you have more of a following and an impact, and you're still holding on to those beliefs. And because there's just very little accountability in modern day society, why would you change? Why would you allow someone like me to make a video to present any sort of factual basis for a disagreement with these ideas that you've clung to for the last 10 years? No, I have to be wrong. Anyone giving you facts has to be wrong because you've believed this for so long, because it just becomes fossilized in your head. So I want to extend that conversation next week to just the music business in general. But I also want to remind everyone that the basis of the music business is copyright. It is. And if you have a shaky understanding of that, then what are you learning about? What parts of the music business are you learning about? What parts of the music business are there that don't rely on this foundation of intellectual property? And so this goes to people who want to learn and they feel like they're at zero, and people who also feel like they know everything but probably don't. Go back to that. Go back to the intellectual property law and the copyright foundation on which virtually all music business is based.
I don't even have anything to add to that, Erinn.
I think what you said is very true, is that there's so many people, like copyright law, like the music business is based off of copyrights. Like it's the intellectual property. That's it. there is no business if you can't capitalize on that. And I feel like when I was first cutting my teeth, I was always at panels and things learning about like the different copyrights within music. And it was always confusing. And I always took a lot of notes, but I would go back and ask more people. And back then, when I first started, I've been in the industry for 12 years, there were a lot of older dudes who could explain it to me. They're like, yeah, this. We've even seen it now. There's like people who've been in the industry 5, 6, 8, 10, 15 years misexplaining it. That's why even when I have a question, I go and ask multiple people to check myself, because I'm like, there's so many ways that you can get small things confused. And then especially when you start getting into like mechanical royalties and the percentages that are assigned with mechanical royalties, when you start getting into like LODs on Sound Exchange. And that being, well, some people say, well, I do 5X what the producer royalty is. Some people are like, well, we do 3X. And some people are like, well, standard is 7X. Like, even that is something that I just started, because when you do LODs with Sound Exchange, and I'm not trying to confuse anybody, it stands for letter of direction. If you release music and you should look into Sound Exchange. If you're not, you probably have a check for $2,000 or $3,000 waiting for you if you make no money in music currently. And if you make decent money in music, you may have $50,000 or $60,000. I have gone on there and found $20,000 for artists. I recently had $28,000 for an artist because we realized that something was wrong with it. So it's a nice payout. But even with that, I just started, when you do it independently, you just assign, oh, okay, I'm just going to give them this amount. Sometimes I don't even independently give people an amount, a letter of direction. When we get the Sound Exchange payments, we just send them a check, right? I'm not saying everybody has to do that, but that's just what we do independently. I just started working with producers who are used to working with signed artists, and they're like, oh, well, for LOD, this is what you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm 12 years in, and just last year, I started doing letters of direction at a standard rate for producers for one of my signed artists. So I just want to say that there's always more to learn. And if you are considering yourself a music exec, or an artist who manages themselves, or even an artist who wants to have an understanding of the music business, if you're listening to this podcast, you should be doing some research about copyrights. Payne has this great video where it simply breaks down everything. Even after watching that video, if you have more questions, just go do some research. But I think it's a shame, to be honest, to be in this music industry and not understanding basic standard, like what are the two main copyrights that you're holding with the music? What does this mean? How do you get paid from these? You know what I'm saying? I think that there's so many ways to educate yourself. And if this is the crux of the business that you're in, you should know about copyrights. And I'm not saying that you have to be a lawyer, but you should know the basics of it. You know, like I had a manager one time tell me I was being predatory for the split that I gave his artist on a featured song. And I'm like, I'm giving you this on the master and on the publishing. What do you mean? Your artist is this big. I'm being nice right now. And they were like, oh, I thought that was just pub and da 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 da. So I had to like break down to this manager who was trying to negotiate with me essentially how generous I was being. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like stuff like that really blows my mind. They believed me because we were friends. But the first step, instead of educating himself, he went to, you're being predatory. And I'm like, bro, call me, because ain't no way.
That's why I made that post that I did on Twitter initially and then on Instagram. It's like, you know, artists and even managers, like when you don't have knowledge of something, your first response is typically to overreact, especially in the music industry, because you are just, I think people start off in the music industry just expecting to be taken advantage of at some point, right? Like there's just a cloud of skepticism that just hovers over the music industry. So,
but that's why you need to educate yourself. That's the whole reason.
But it's almost like it's almost like some people are almost like waiting and excited for it to happen.
Because
Like,
they see
oh,
these
this is
damn
that moment.
movies. Yeah.
This is that moment. Because I feel like Hobson was like this. I feel like, oh, this is that moment, and I think he was like excited about it so that he can like flip it and like use it for socials, and like this will be his moment. Like, oh, this is the moment that I'm getting taken advantage of. Bring it on, because I'm about to make a song about it and share it with my fans, and they're gonna love it. Like that's. But even if you don't use it for a song, I feel like there is like this is your like this is your moment where you get broken into the music industry by being taken advantage of, and you're just waiting for that first person to do it. So you're almost like leaning into it, like wanting, like, I know that sounds weird, but like you want that, you want that story under your belt of that person that was trying to take advantage of you, but really you didn't even get that moment yet because it was just because you're stupid and didn't understand the situation that was right in your face. Like, and that's really weird. It's a really weird thing. It's a weird space. I don't know what
this is a conversation beyond the music business, because a lot of people just want confrontation and they want to feel like they can assert themselves in a righteously angry way. A lot of people embrace, and I think, in the face of real injustice, righteous anger is what it is, but people misuse that. And
you're a sick individual if that's you. And that's
right. You need therapy, and you need to find your own peace. Because when you walk into a situation armed with knowledge, someone puts forth something that is clearly predatory or violates, your boundaries. You just simply say straightforwardly, I'm not accepting this. You don't even have to explain why. Because when you're in the business and they're in the business, they already know what they're doing. So just say no, and be prepared to walk away if it is something that you're not able to accept. There's a lot of power in that. And in doing so, you're going to be stoic about it, but you're not going to lose your head and throw things or figuratively pitch a tantrum, that kind of thing. You don't really get anything doing that.
But I would also just be careful. Again, you guys might think I'm sensitive to this, but like it just kind of like our scammer conversation last week. Like people are so quick to use these words, right? Predatory, right? Like when Funk Volume fell apart and me and Dizzy were trying to work out Still Moving, like I know that the deal he put on the table for me, I wouldn't call it predatory. It was a ridiculously stupid deal if I was to enter into it. He essentially wanted me to basically fund everything, split the label 50-50. However, with his music, the label would only get like 10%. So that means I would get 5%. And then I would be funding this entire label with artists that, weren't even, barely full-time artists. So it was just stupid. Like, it's just like you don't have that much knowledge of the music industry to even present like something that's fair. Like, even I wouldn't say that's I know that was based in ignorance and probably just a lot of ego. Like, I wouldn't call that necessarily predatory. Anyway, just be careful, like, with the words that you use, because once you start using predatory, scammer, and you start attaching that to people, it's hard sometimes for them to shake if that wasn't what it is. I mean, if it is what it is, and that's what they deserve. But
well, when you have a platform like, what, I guess I don't want to name them, but when you have big platforms in your corner perpetuating those narratives too, it becomes a lot more destructive as well.
Yeah. Erinn, I know we get Erinn. I don't mind going a few minutes longer so we can make sure we get Erinn's topic in, because maybe we just have like leave the floor for Erinn's rant, because it sounded like she needed to get something off.
No, I'm not necessarily going to like do an angry rant. I just kind of want to ask a question, because like you said, when I introduced my topic before we started recording, I'm so up and down with this industry. I just don't know. I vacillate between I love it here and I absolutely hate it. I have contemplated.
And we know this because I know this, well, because I talk to you, but also because your tweets are so high and low. I'd be looking at them like, damn, she up today. Oh, she down today.
Here's
She
the
up
thing.
today.
I get excited about my artists and the projects that I'm building with my companies. So that's when I'm like, oh man, I love this. But then it's like when I have to step outside of the house that I'm building, I hate it here. That's like literally the up and down for me. I do not understand why this industry is the way that it is. It is full of people seemingly trying to take advantage of people. It does feel like it's super full of people who are like just looking out for themselves. And as somebody who had to learn to look out for myself, I'm not saying that everybody has to be an overgiver and an over deliverer. I am saying that it doesn't feel as much like a community as people try to parade it as. And it's really problematic to me when people that I've worked with or dealt with preach loyalty, but the moment there's a check available to them, they're out. And that's what I have been experiencing so much lately. It's not even like real money. It's like a one-time check that you're going to have spent within the next maybe 4 or 5 months. You'd be lucky to make a check like these last 6 months, but you're out on some like, yeah, I don't want to be specific about things, but I think I'm very confused by this industry. And it makes me ask the question, which is my actual topic, like, what do you do when you're discouraged within the music industry? Especially like, I think Dame, you and Payne are good people for me to ask this to and be sounding boards, because Dame, for the most part, you've moved the majority of your energy out of the music industry, even though you're still consulting with Too Lost and working with the MEC, obviously, and with the artists, but you're doing a lot of stuff in the comedy world, which is entertainment, but not music. And then Payne, you've done touring, you've done management, all of that. And you're like, hey, I just really enjoy doing the education side and being a beat maker and like being a part of the producer community. So I don't know. I want to kind of ask y'all, because even right now, I realized that I was at a crossroads, y'all know, a couple months ago, where I was just really drained and really hurt by the way that things were going. And I recognized that I didn't need to be as artist facing, which was the trajectory that I was already on, but I just escalated that. So now sitting back more as an executive within my company and training my team more, opting out of running the Excellence Academy weekly, opting out of just more artist facing stuff. Now I'm like, okay, I'm not making the type of money, even though I feel like I'm making a big impact. So my next move is to get a job. And I was like, I don't want to leave the music industry. Maybe I should just explore other sides of it that don't require me to be an entrepreneur. So now I'm working on getting a job within the industry, not just consulting, because that shit is like so up and down, but getting a job within the industry. I'm now like, okay, not that I'm shooting that, but what if I end up enjoying that way more than this entrepreneurial side? What if I just completely leave, because I feel like so drained. Like, what do you do with the discouragement when you feel it in the industry that you've given so much to,
Yeah, well, one, I think it's dope that you're sharing it, because I think a lot of people, look up to you, as they should, but even you are still kind of dealing with some of these things, the discouragement, the up and down nature of the industry. I think for me, one, I feel like I have a strong foundation outside of the music industry. I mean, I got, I don't have that many friends that, like super in my inner circle that are even part of the music industry. So I think that's super helpful. But I've come to learn, like, the industry is what it is, and I've lowered my expectations of people. So, I don't really get let down that much anymore, because I don't really let that many people penetrate like the inner circle. If you're not like in the inner circle, I'm cool with you. I kind of like have you at arm's length, and I just kind of lower my expectations of, what I expect from people, because I've just seen the dark side way too many times. So it just allows me to be more even keel about things. And then just with experience, you just learn what to get involved with, what to stay away from. And, you know, when nobody's perfect, you're probably still going to make mistakes. But, you know, it probably just comes with experience and the folks I have around me. That's all I got for you, Erinn. Sorry.
I mean, I think luckily for me, I'm just able to do multiple things within the music business because you know, DJing is vastly different from making beats, which is vastly different from making YouTube videos, which is vastly different from making sample packs. So I kind of rotate between them, but I think it's terrifying to get to the point where even the rotation is a source of stress. And so that's when I start kind of losing hope. I'm like, oh man, this is now more of a internal thing for me that I need to address. That's when it gets hard, really hard. So I don't know. That's more like a coping mechanism thing, you know, just kind of trying to recenter myself and get back to why I'm even here and why I started and find that source of energy and hope. Because yeah, after years and years, and especially like, I don't know what it is, but over the last couple months, it's like when it rains, it pours, and that's been a mixture of good and bad. Whereas traditionally, I feel like the music business for me has been pretty stable for the last 5 years. And now suddenly it's not. And I don't know if that's how you're feeling, Erinn, but that's like the worst feeling. It feels like the rug's getting pulled out from under you. And I don't know if I'm trying to view everything as neutral and then make my responses lean towards the positive. And that is a challenge. But I've found it to, at very least, make me feel less like I'm in control and therefore less like I want to control the situation. And then I get frustrated because if you try to control something that you really can't, then that's just another layer of frustration. So trying to control what I can, and then also just, and this is just for me, like looking at my own habits and my own routine, and then questioning it, you know, really, really picking over it and asking myself what I can do differently, either for my financial health or my mental health.
I mean, I think getting a job be cool. Like I see a lot of people, like you said, in the music industry, even at Two Lost, like a lot of, you know, they work full time there. There's a kid there that has like 900,000 monthly listeners that works full time at Two Lost. I'm interviewing him on Friday because we're starting like an artist interview series for their socials. But, you know, I think entrepreneurship is overhyped on social media, especially. You know, it can be great. It can suck. Like, you know, it's not for everybody. And that's not in a bad way. If I say entrepreneurship is not for you, and I'm not talking to you, Erinn, it's just a general you. If it's not, entrepreneurship is not for you, like that's okay. Like I have a shitload of friends that do really, really, really well that aren't entrepreneurs. Like you know, there's no problem not going the entrepreneurship route. You don't have to own everything in the world. You know, and this is just, I think it's courageous of you to share your story because it's a very real one. You know, and you have a lot of wins under your belt.
I think that's the hard part. I think my wins don't equate to the type of peace or sustainability that I have in my life. So I'm like, so what equals a win for me now? You know, I think that in my 30s, translating what my desires are is way different than it was in my 20s. And in my 20s, I just wanted my artist to be successful. And now I'm like, man, I want to be successful. And my version of success looks different than even people's perception of me. You know what I'm saying? Like I get really burned out on people being like, oh, you're so successful. And I'm like, I'm not shitting on any of my success. I'm super grateful for where I'm at, and especially for where I sit within the music industry. Even being out at South by showed me like how permeating my voice has been in the last probably 3 years of my career. So I'm really grateful for that. And I think none of that could have happened if I wouldn't have lived through all of these experiences. But I still don't feel valued within the music industry right now as an entrepreneur. I'm like, I just need to go somewhere else where I can trade my experience for dollars, at least right now, because I feel like as an entrepreneur, it's not even necessarily about that. It's about finding the right place to make the money, not necessarily about the what you've already put into it. And maybe I'm just not doing it properly. I just got a new mentor. I'm about to start again with my executive coach. But I don't know. I feel like trying to be a compassionate leader in this industry, but then also being a Black woman, and then also working primarily with Black independent artists, I think it's put me in a place where I'm at a disadvantage, even though I've brought a lot to the game, you know?
I mean, I think we all feel that way. You know, I like I say, I just don't care anymore. Like, I just think my focus is just somewhere where different, you know, not trying to get people to see the people that see my value, like, great, that's amazing. Like, I'm not out to try to get more people to see my value. I just want to do good work and build good things. And if that appreciation comes, cool. If it doesn't, I'm still happy with what I built. You know, I think that's where I'm at with it. Because if someone were to ask me, like, I feel like I've done more than I've gotten appreciation for. But you know, I don't really care about that anymore, to be honest.
When I talk about value, though, I'm talking specifically right now about money. I do not care if y'all say anything about me. I'm over that. Because for me, it's like in the rooms that need to acknowledge me, I'm being acknowledged. So I'm not worried about that. I think that I'm saying specifically monetary value. I'm just like, I'm not working nearly as much as I was even 2 years ago, but the last 6 months, I haven't been working as much because I'm like, why am I paying so many people and I'm doing all the work? But I'm just at a point now where I'm not working a lot, but I'm also not making a ton. And I'm looking at the impact that I'm having. And I'm just like, it just feels like it's not adding up. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I don't know what to do with that. I don't know. I don't know what to do with it, because at this point, it's like surprising how much I'm adding, but not getting from this place.
Well, for other people listening to this podcast, weigh in on the comments. I know that you have a lot of fans of the MEC. Maybe they can give you some better advice than I gave you. You know, so weigh in, help Erinn, give her some support, some advice. And we can wrap this up, Payne. This has been a longer episode, but I think it made sense for it to be longer.
Well, we appreciate you tuning in. I do feel like the comments and the viewership has just been all in all a lot more supportive and growing. And so that's encouraging. We appreciate that. And we'll be back next week, same time, same place, with a new episode of the MEC podcast. Peace.
Peace.